Being a founder is climbing one small hill and then realizing that there's a large hill on the other end, and then climbing that, and then realizing there's a mountain after that. So it's a continuous journey, and we are in the middle of it right now.
While you were leaving Amazon, you could have chosen multiple areas to work on, right? Why choose the $35 billion opportunity of customer support?
Original vision was, and still it's true to the day, how do we make humans and AI live in synergy with each other? How is there a balance in the workplace between humans and AI? If we think of one of the biggest societal problems of our time, it's how will AI impact the modern work?
There is a lot of debate around being a ChatGPT wrapper product also, right? And we've seen so many wrapper products come out. And what you're saying is so incredibly important because owning the AI stack or your LLM gives you a lot of predictability, but also, enterprises end up trusting you a lot more. Well, let's talk about that aspect also.
We see this across the board. And again, every business has different risk profile and way of thinking about it. I would think about the simple architecture of big data versus small data.
Talking about your competitive set, you also spoke about how some of them are billion-dollar ARR companies. What is your ambition with Level AI?
We think of this as the human impact which we can create with our technology. So to give you a sense, worldwide, there are more than 30 million people who work in just customer service alone. In America alone, there are 5 million people who work in customer service.
Hello and welcome everyone to the India Opportunity Show. Today we are speaking with an Indian founder who's building one of the most ambitious enterprise AI companies out of the US. Ashish Nagar is the founder and CEO of Level AI, a cutting-edge voice intelligence platform that's transforming how enterprises manage customer conversations. Before starting Level AI, Ashish worked on Amazon's Alexa AI team with a deep background in NLP and a vision shaped at IIT Delhi, Stanford, and Amazon. Ashish is now taking on a $35 billion opportunity in the contact center space. Ashish and Level AI are at the forefront of enterprise-grade conversational AI with over $73 million raised. We'll dive into his journey from India to Silicon Valley, the real-world impact of AI in customer service, and what it takes to build a generational tech company in the middle of an AI revolution. Hope you enjoy watching. Hi, Ashish. Welcome to the India Opportunity Show. Such a privilege to have you with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Ashish, the intention of getting you on board, as we were just discussing, there are so many Indian founders who want to build global products, right? And I think the ambition and aspiration is there in founders, but they might not necessarily have a blueprint of how to do that. And getting people like yourself is very important for me on the show because people like you can actually become torch bearers for Indian founders who have those aspirations because you seem to have cracked the code from your journey from IIT Delhi, Stanford, Amazon, and now to Level AI. I think you've really shown what's possible and you're living the American dream. And I would love for you to start there in talk about your journey and connect the dots for us a little bit.
So you're being too kind, and as I was telling you before, being a founder is climbing one small hill and then realizing that there's a large hill on the other end, and then climbing that, and then realizing there's a mountain after that. So it's a continuous journey, and we are in the middle of it right now as we speak. But to your point, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey, and then what would my advice be for um, founders who are doing this in India, US, and taking on the global market. So I didn't start from. I come from an entrepreneurial background in the sense I worked in a small family business growing up.
Mhm.
So while I've always spent my life at the intersection of business and product. My undergrad in IIT was in physics, so I did a quantum computing internship during the summer. So I was always a technology guy, but interested in building a business or interested in building a product. So that, I think, is one data point or one um, pointer I would have. If you are working on the intersection of product and business or technology and business, that's generally a good place to start. That's number one. Number two, that early entrepreneurial experience. But uh, having said that, now, even since I came to the US, I came in 2008, 2009. That was a very different world compared to the world we live in now. Just the ability you and I are connecting, and it's such a simple way of connecting to customers in the same way, connecting to hires in the same way. So for the entrepreneur who is now starting in India and starting a global business, it's a much more flatter business. So you can hire and build global teams. Number one, you can prospect for ideas which have a global appeal sitting in India. Um, and thirdly, you can build cross border go to market teams, which are critical. And I can talk about that as well. So, those are three key things which I feel are critical to building a startup. Now, even before that, there's the question of idea identification and finding a problem to solve. I think that is where a global empathy kind of helps, right? And we can talk about that a little bit more. So I would say those are three or four key things. And now for founders, it's as great a time as ever to start a global company sitting in India. In fact, of the 200 odd people who work at Level, more than 100 are in India. So
Oh, wow.
we have that in our DNA.
Right. Absolutely. And that's amazing to know because I didn't know that half of your team is pretty much based
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in India.
exactly.
Yeah. So tell us also about your specific journey at Amazon, right? Because working
Right.
on Alexa as a product um,
Yeah.
obviously shaped your viewpoint in terms of what you're doing now. So, what was that journey like for you?
Absolutely. So that was a very interesting time at Amazon. When I joined Amazon, it was a small company with 250,000 people. And when I left, it was a slightly larger company with almost 750,000 people
Wow.
and was still one of the best run companies I've ever worked at. And Alexa was a small group of 700 people when I joined and 5,000 people when I left in 2 years. It's an incredible path to scale. But there were a couple of things which stood out to me while working at Amazon in the Alexa team. One, in my second year there, I was working on a Star Trek computer, literally. Jeff had this idea to have Alexa talk to a human nonstop on any social topic. Imagine you walk into a social conversation in a bar or in a social engagement, and an Alexa is sitting there, and you can talk to it or her for 20 minutes on anything about the latest India England game or like any social engagement. What would that look like? And this was 2018, 2019, and this was the grand challenge which we're trying to solve. There was a team of Amazon scientists working on this. I was a product leader in the middle of this. And then we opened this program up to the best research, NLP research institutes in the world. So we had teams from MIT, CMU, Oxford, everybody competing on this grand prize. This was 2019. Now ChatGPT can do this, on any topic, right?
I was just going to say because I end up having
Exactly.
really conversations with ChatGPT, and so you clearly seeded a lot of that work. Right?
Exactly. And like at that, to your point, Srishti, when we talk to this now, when we talk to ChatGPT now with the voice mode, especially, and there's so much happening there. 5 years ago, 10 of the best universities in the world and Amazon's resources. When I left of that 20-minute, we were at the 90-second mark. We were still 18 and a half minutes away from that goal. And those 18 and a half minutes were very, very hard. It was like climbing Everest, right? But what it gave me was a view into where NLP, what were the unsolved problems in NLP, the problem of memory, the problem of long context learning, the problem of understanding multiple intents, like kind of how when we chit chat, we talk about cricket and then the movie and then politics and like what's happening in our neighborhood and so on, right? And that was the insight that over the next 5 to 10 years, there'll be a rapid change in how NLP evolves. A rapid change. There are five or six of these problems which will be solved, and that will unlock these markets where there will be vertical or horizontal SaaS companies or application companies which will be created. And Amazon and Google and these largest companies would build the underlying platforms, but there would be companies like Level who would take on specific problems and build end-to-end solutions to that. So that's the technology journey, and of course, Amazon is an incredible place in terms of how they think about innovation, how they think about customer centricity, how they organize towards outcomes, and the two pizza teams and so on. So it was after Stanford is another business school for sure. Working at Amazon for a couple of years, yeah.
That's amazing because people I think often underestimate the level of innovation at these companies, right? Because having worked at Meta, I know that Zuck was working on AR, VR, and everything back 10 years ago, right? And some of
Right.
these things just take time to materialize. And while we live through multiple hype cycles around different innovations that come
Right.
to be, but it just takes time for it to become
Yeah.
implementable into actual real life applications. Talk
100%.
to us about what you have seen in terms of technological progress which has happened, because like you said 2018-19 is when you were working on this, and now
Right.
level AI is at a point where you can actually integrate it with real life applications, right? So how has that changed? What do you think was the biggest change that has happened, or inflection point, would you say?
That's wow. That's a great question. So I'll tell you a couple of things. One is the the uh, Jeff again talks about this idea of impact. It's innovation times distribution, right? Like you can have an incredible innovation, but does it have incredible distribution, right? If five people are using it, it's not really impact, right? Or it's not but what ChatGPT made possible was innovation times distribution. The fact that it has 500 million daily active users, or whatever the number is, that is incredible innovation. So, one innovation definitely has been that form factor of the chat form factor, which has made it so easy for anybody to use it, from my mom to a scientist to anybody, from an investor and product manager and so on, right? So that innovation of a natural language interface in both in chat and voice, that is huge. But if you look at the AI layer, like the parts within AI, of course, large language models and this idea of pre-training and pre-training and NLP, but large language models when I was talking to you about the the problem of 2018, 2019, we used to have five or six dedicated teams for each of these steps of in natural language products. Well, for example, there was a model for speech to text understanding. There was a model for understanding the intent of what this person is saying. There's a model for picking up knowledge. Now there's the Swiss Army knife, which does everything, right? Which is this large language model. So all computer science textbooks, in a way, all research of the last 20, 25 years on NLP and knowledge retrieval and has been out of the window. So that's what I would say would be the second thing. The first is the chat interface. The second is, of course, the large language model. And the large language model, now over the last few years, even weeks, days now, you see there are two things within that. One is the knowledge of the word, the fact that this system is not just understanding what the person is saying, but it also knows a lot about the word around us.
Yeah.
And those were two separate things. There was search and there was, understanding. And the last thing I would say is memory. That's an unsolved problem. This idea of context and memory. We're still like these new age models have 2 million, 2 million context windows and so on. And now it's increasing every day. The fact that a big book or a big document or a long conversation can be understood, that was unthinkable, 2 years ago. And the pace at which it is going. So that's what I would say. Those four things, just the intuition which made this large innovation possible, LLMs, um, memory, and the knowledge, and marrying the two, right? And you see so many applications which come out of these innovations, right? Yeah, that was a long answer, but
No, I love that because one really underestimates how much effort goes behind the scenes, right? Like teams like yours have been working on solving these complex problems for decades, even, and now it's coming to fruition. And it's become so easy to access that we really don't appreciate how much effort's gone behind making something this accessible. But coming back to the opportunity identification, because even while you were leaving Amazon, you could have chosen multiple areas to work on, right? Why choose the $35 billion opportunity of customer support?
oh, wonderful. No, that's a great question. So the idea was and this is something which links back to your original question. We did start off with a vision of disrupting customer service. The original vision was, and it's true to the day, how do we make humans and AI live in synergy with each other? How is there a balance in the workplace between humans and AI? If we think of one of the biggest societal problems of our time, it's how will AI impact the modern worker, right? Will it replace it? Will it augment it? And so on. So the thought was using AI to augment frontline workers. People like you and I have so many tools. We have Slack and Atlassian and Google Meets and Zoom and so on. But the woman or man who's working with their hands, a nurse, a technician, contact center worker, a plumber, back then AirPods were really big, so we wanted to use AirPods and have an Alexa like voice assistant in their ear which they could just ask a question. So let's say if you work in Macy's here or Big Bazaar in India, and if somebody walks up to you and says, do you have size 9 of this Nike in the stock, instead of going back to the warehouse, they would just ask, right? Uh, or if you have a nurse which is, hey, what's the right dosage for this particular medicine, he or she could just ask the AI, and the AI would also be listening to them and analyze. So that was the original vision, to augment human productivity of frontline workers. And that's the entrepreneurial journey. We rapidly showed it to multiple customers across financial services, healthcare, retail. And everybody said, great technology, but it's a little bit ahead of its time. So but I have this big problem in customer service. Okay, same underlying technology stack, same underlying problem, workers who are struggling with helping customers in their day to day. And we kept on digging and seeing that the incumbent solutions, it was a really large market, which was unserved, not being served appropriately by the incumbent solutions because they were married to the old technology stack. And there's a little bit of the BlackBerry iPhone moment, right? They were on the BlackBerry architecture, or you can say, the old, you know, of old architecture in any shape or form. And we realized there's an opportunity to build an iPhone here, and solving that problem fundamentally. That's where we got to the customer service use case. And the other thing, from a founder advice perspective, and just generally, and I know YC talks about this concept a lot. If you take a small share of your target addressable market, right? Let's say 5%. And if you can build 100 to 500 million ARR company with 5% TAM penetration, you have a business there, right? And that was a big thing. A lot of ideas don't pass that bar because the TAM itself is not big enough. In customer service, for example, we observed that there were a dozen companies which were in adjacent categories with a billion plus ARR. Like there are half a dozen companies which have 2 billion in revenue in customer service. Twilio, Five9, Genesis, Nice in some of these areas. Salesforce Service Cloud has 8 billion in ARR. So we thought, we could build an intelligence and automation system with a large enough company here. So that's the market size is really important. You can have the best product market fit, but the size of the market is not big enough, you can't build a company. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're just starting out, similar to yourself, a lot of founders don't really know which is the market that they should go after, and where a customer is going to
Right.
pay for their product or service, right?
Right.
And even which type of customer persona should you be zeroing in on? You
Right.
have obviously been able to solve for the major enterprise set of clients, which is,
Right.
I would say, the healthiest pool of clients to go after because lowest
Yeah. Yeah.
churn and high repeatability. And once you're in there, you tend to stick on. At least that's the hope for most founders. But let's talk about that journey as well. But I want you to go a little deeper in. I know
Yeah.
now you're at Series C, but take us back to the
Yeah.
early seed days, where in terms of evolution, how was that journey, early journey like for you?
Oh, that's a really good point. So I'll tell you, like, so in that first, when we were starting off, we would have 2 week sprint cycles of picking a vertical, and let's say energy is that vertical, and then the next week retail, the next week financial services, and so on, and making sure we're talking to 5 to 10 customers and who fit our ICP. And that's really hard. But that also trains you to do the work now, which is sales, which is also really hard. But uh, you need to have a hypothesis. So, to your point, you need to have a hypothesis of what your target customer looks like. So, for example, in our case, our hypothesis was complex B2C customers who are who have complex service workflows. Financial services is a great example, banks, insurance companies. So we looked at Bank of America, obviously won't talk to us, for 5 people. But what are the new age banks which are coming up in Silicon in the Bay Area and generally, and we went after those, and that was a universe of about 50 to 100 companies, of which who could we navigate into through our investor network, through our uh, business school network or undergrad or friends, family, beg, borrow, steal, and get those discussions going with that ICP as soon as possible. Because I don't think you should go after any customer to do that discussion, because then you are not really testing your hypothesis that if I had this product, or if I'm offering this, would you buy it? How much would you pay for it? How long would it take for you to install it? What will be the ROI journey like? So as much as you can get closer to your ICP and have that conversation, I think that is really, really, really critical. I think the other thing which at least we think about a lot is, don't go to these companies with PowerPoints, go to them with products. Right? Often companies which say, like, you know what, this is a design of what I want to build. That's okay. That's better than nothing. But if you have actually gotten a meeting with a real business decision maker who can buy your software, then show them at least a Figma prototype, or at least, I would say, in today's day and age where person can write code very fast,
Yeah.
show them something working which they can click around with. And I think you can build something reasonable in a few months, because that also, now you are getting deep customer feedback. It's valuable for your time, and you can really see that in their eyes, that are they engaging? Are they imagining themselves using this thing? The kind of questions they're asking. So, and we did that, as I said, over 6 different verticals: energy, finance, healthcare, retail, insurance, and between energy, oil and gas, and solar and wind. And we would run these business testing sprints, basically, right? And after, as told you, like after 6 months of this, 20 conversations pointed to customer service across different verticals.
Right.
And that's when we started digging deeper there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree to your point in terms of experimentation and rapid iterations at that early stage is super, super
Right.
critical because you're going through so much, right, in terms of stage identification, what kind of customers to go after, what verticals to go after. So
Right.
that's a very healthy exercise that you guys did. But Ashish, also, what I'm seeing in India is that people are also choosing to build for specific verticals, right? Like, for example, you're
Yeah.
talking about BFSI. Now
Right.
that's a large enough market to go after, and so go and so you start with 5%, but you can grow into like
Crazy.
becoming a
Right.
monopoly in that space itself. BFSI, I think, would be the largest. Would you say in that sense? One
Probably.
of the
Probably.
largest, right? So there are these verticalized solutions which are also emerging. So how do you think of going horizontal versus vertical? And at what point did you, zoom in or out from your 6 verticals to now how many ever you focus?
Great. No, no, great question, Shriti. So there, I would add one more thing to the previous answer. One is, which is in each of these meetings, and also with investor conversations, every meeting has signal and noise, right? Like, and as a founder, it is very hard for you to be like, because everyone gives you advice, but you have to really sort of. One of the investors told us when we were first building a retail business, you know what, retail is not a very, customers don't really pay, the margins are really low. I was like, what do they know? Of course, like they'll pay. But they were absolutely right. And we saw that signal early on. But so one thing I would say in every meeting, either it's with an investor when you're trying to raise money, or within it's a customer, which is the best. Whatever feedback you're picking and processing, that is really critical. But to your question of horizontal versus vertical, that is, that's a huge point for us. I think I would say, like, you can go at it in either angle. If you have a product which is extremely, has broad applications, and you think in one vertical like BFSI, you can get to a significant revenue milestone, it is pretty reasonable to specialize in it. But I do think if the product itself does not require a lot of specialization, like you don't have to do major modifications in the product to go from BFSI to healthcare, let's say, or BFSI to retail, then um, taking a larger share of the market would is the approach we took, because um, a, it gives you more shots at the goal to grow faster. B, um, you have a larger opportunity to build a much massive company. The third approach is you start with one vertical, win that over a year or two, or start learn that and then expand other verticals. We have seen that as well. um, One last thing I would say is like pattern recognition from other companies in this space. So we looked at other companies which had become big in our space, like Salesforce Service Cloud, for example, or the legacy companies in our space. I would call Medallia or Qualtrics in that space. And then we studied them closely and we realized all of them had built the same underlying product, but had built product marketing for specific verticals.
Hmm.
And their go to market for verticals was slightly different. So that's learning from people who have come before us as well, which played a role in how we thought about this. Yeah.
And when you look at this competitive set, because I do think that's a very, very good exercise for founders to do, to
Right.
understand, which are the legacy companies that have been able to
Right.
crack the code in their space. What were some of the insights what were some of the other insights that you were able to draw from those competitors, which have benefited you today?
Oh man, that's a great point. So multiple. So which markets to target? So let's talk about that, right? So let's talk about product market fit. Which markets to target? Which segments of that market to target? So for example, I talked about Qualtrics and Medallia and some of the intelligence companies. Now we launched a voice and chat automation product. So we looked at what competitors in our space were doing. So the one is which markets to target. And then within that, which segments. So you talked about this enterprise versus mid-market versus SMB. If we looked at in our space, again, Medallia, Qualtrics, or Salesforce, and some of the other companies, they grew rapidly due to enterprise pull. They had $5 million, $2 million, $20 million deals, and it was evident that there is a budget appetite and a buying appetite at that level. So it's which verticals and which segments within that. So that's the product market fit part of it. And also, what was the biggest pain point which they were addressing, which is unmet and which can be met with the new technology. So that's the product angle. After that, studying their go to market closely, what are the kind of salespeople they hired? What are the kind of sales engineers they hired? And um, that influences our thinking a lot on solution based selling, consultative selling, and how do we approach building that go to market team, and then all the way to post sales. What can we learn from them on what is the customer expectation around uh, value delivery, you know, um, value realization over a period of time, keeping the customer engaged over a period of time. So there is so much learning. Like if you are disrupting the underlying architecture, you don't have to disrupt everything, right? Like you can learn a lot from what's working and what has worked and build on it, right? And it's arrogant to think that everything needs to be disrupted at the same time. It's too much. Um, yeah.
Like they say, you don't need to keep reinventing the wheel. Take whatever benefits you, right? But in this case, there's also a risk of sometimes, getting misguided because you are competing with their legacy. But there might be things that you could do differently or be a disruptor in that sense.
Yeah.
Whereas, and not exactly follow their playbook
Right.
for certain aspects. So, were there
Right.
some aspects like that for you as well?
No, that's a great point. So, like, and I think and in both of these areas, like, one can learn from the problems which they have identified or the things which they ran into, but especially with technology changing so rapidly, if you think first principles, and I know it's almost a cliche to say think first principles, right? But if you think first principles, or at least try to reason into why a certain solution is certain way, you can come up with better modern solutions to the same problem. For example, like it's a simple thing, but but it's so important, especially in enterprise. Once we enable customers, there's a huge tendency for you to do it one to one. A post sales support with a dedicated customer success manager, and so on. Now with AI, you can build 100 onboarding videos, training videos, which are customized to a specific use case over a couple of days. All right. So you know what the problem is, that the enterprise customer is looking for deep engagement. They're looking for deep enablement on the entire journey. They need support, but there is a way to service it now, which is technology led, which you don't have to be encumbered by how it was done before, right? Same with, and then on product, we're completely reimagining how AI is done and building from bottoms up. Happy to talk about that. But same with go to market, for example. There are so much which technology can do. These customers expect an enterprise selling cycle, but they don't expect the selling cycle and enablement to take 6 months, really. Right? Those are two different things. You can really do a good job in 6 weeks, right? If you can sort of, if you can lead with technology and the right thinking in some of those areas. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this would be a good segue into going deeper on the product side as well, because there's so many trade-offs that you end up making at the earliest stages, which end up
Right.
working or not working in your favor. What
Right.
were some foundational product decisions that you think you got right? Because this space did see a lot of companies suddenly crop up, and a lot of them were raising funding, but you were able to differentiate in terms of focusing on very high growth very quickly. You were able to scale very quickly. So obviously that can be traced back to some product level decisions. Let's
Right.
talk about those.
No, so that's, so there were two or three things which we um architecturally got right, in my view, and we're still strong proponents of it in the space of OpenAI and so on. So one was a real-time architecture. So how do we make sure that we can help our customers and customers? So if we work with Bank of Bank, or we don't work with, but give you an example, a simple example, how can we do an intervention or help them in sub second or sub 2 seconds? So building a real-time architecture from the beginning, that now enables us to launch Navient, which is our voice and chat automation product, where a customer can talk to an AI agent, sub 1 second latency, beautiful customer experience, and so on. So one was that deep investment in that real-time architecture, and that requires investment in telephony, speech to text. All of that pipeline has to be sub 1 second latency, and so on. So that was one thing. The other big thing was, we do not use OpenAI or Google or others in production at scale. All of the LLM, all of the generative AI work is in-house to level AI. We have built customer services specific LLMs, which provide us an ability to serve 100 million, a billion data points at scale. One of the problems with OpenAI is, and I'm sure you have seen this, sometimes it says, our servers are melting. We
Yeah.
can't, we can't process this much traffic.
Specifically with India usage, I think Indians are really going all out and using.
Right, but a lot of contact centers are in India, in
Yeah.
Philippines, in Europe, in Middle East, and US, all over the world. So how do you service that large volume of Gen AI traffic, right? And we think about this in big data and small data use cases. And I'll take 30 seconds to talk about it. Small data use case of Gen AI is writing a marketing blog using Gen AI or Jarvis or something. But even Walmart, the largest company in the world, only publishes 5,000 blogs or a few hundred blogs, right? That's a small data Gen AI use case. But a big data Gen AI use case is customer service, where a large organization has 100 million conversations to review or to service, right? So you can't push that with third party technology, right? Or you can't service that. So from day one, we have built an entire AI stack in house. We have our own GPU clusters, we have our own LLMs. We've tuned right from the GPU. We work on inference layer all the way to the app layer. It also has an added benefit. Our gross margins, which matter to investors like yourself, are like software. So you will see that that is a huge problem with AI companies. Their gross margins are anchored to the gross margins of the big, LLM providers. If you have to build a sustainable long-term business, that's not scalable, right? So uh, those were the two foundational choices: real-time architecture and owning the LLM stack all the way from the GPU layer to the app layer. The third thing I would say, I think, is AI native software, and especially, and we were seeing this very early on, even 3 or 4 years ago. This idea of hallucination, right? This idea of why do I trust
Mm.
what's coming out of an AI, that has to be built from day one in these workflows. So either it's a customer facing workflow like a chatbot, or it's a business analyst facing workflow. Everybody needs to have trust in what's going on with this, right? With this AI. Can I trust the report coming out of it? Can I trust that back and forth? Is it giving me policies which don't exist? So we built this trust layer and observability layer right from the very first step in all of our AI workflows. So a business analyst could actually observe, why am I seeing this? Could actually say, you know what, don't do this model. It could give it feedback and the model learns and off we go, right?
Mm.
That's a completely different way of building AI products, which were not there in the SaaS age.
Yeah.
SaaS age was very deterministic. You put in something, you get out something, it's a chart, right? It's a table, right?
Mm.
But now if there's a non-deterministic layer in between, right? Which so you have to build trust from day one. So I would say those three things: real-time architecture, owning the LLM layer, and building in trust and this feedback loop
Yeah.
from day one, right? So, and you can scale that at any, you can scale that, especially again for the enterprise use case. Uh, those elements are really important because you have to scale, you have to serve at very large scales at reasonable costs, and they have to be able to trust it. You know,
Yeah.
they don't want to experiment with stuff, right? Like it's not a PLG thing. You know, try it out and you see what goes. You know.
Yeah, I actually want to go. I want to double down on what you just said because
Uh-huh.
there is a lot of debate around being a Chat GPT wrapper product also,
Yeah.
right? And we've seen so many wrapper products come out. And what you're saying is so incredibly important because owning the AI stack or your LLM gives you a lot of predictability, but also enterprises end up trusting you a lot more, right?
Right.
Because they know that you control the AI stack and not it's not a wrapper product built on top of someone else's tech. Let's talk about that aspect also because that is so significant, and a lot of founders might not fully appreciate what kind of nuance it adds into the equation.
Yeah. So great point. So I see this, we see this across the board, and again, every business has different risk profile uh, and way of thinking about it. I would think about the simple architecture of big data versus small data. If you have a small data product, which is there in a lot of cases, as I said, if you're building a marketing application, if you're building a legal application, legal AI is a really important space. You're not really processing 100 million data points, right? So your cost performance framework or cost performance privacy framework might still work out. But if you are doing a big data problem, if you're building a coding system which has millions of lines of code, even a small company, right? Leave alone a big company. If you're doing something in customer service, if you're doing something in data infrastructure and you're using AI there's a big data problem. I would think about that very closely of not to build a wrapper, but build something in-house to give you long-term competitive advantage. There is a tendency, and rightly so, of fast time to market. We talked about like rapidly testing
Yeah.
things. And that is where there's this trade off. Like, how do you rapidly test things if you build all this AI?
Yep.
Right? One approach, which we try often, is we would pilot with an off the shelf thing, build customer appetite with something off the shelf, quickly test it, and then start a parallel work stream right then and there to bring it in house. All right. I'm telling you all the secrets, but
I love it because this is the juicy kind of stuff we want to
right?
get to.
Start, and but that's how you scale, right? Because if your eyes on the big ticket, right, where you want to go after the large customers, like, and especially in the India context, people don't appreciate you and I. All of us that don't appreciate the scale of India, right? Like if you have to build AI for India or for a global audience, the scale is incredibly large, right? And so I would say that is one way to crack this fast paths to market while building something in house, right? And so you don't sacrifice one for the other. I would almost say at the Series A stage, if I were to be very prescriptive, right? at the Series A stage, when you have proven product market fit, you have a set of customers, that's the time when I would, like, when you have a good CTO, that's the time when I would like really invest in a longer term strategy. Because when you're going for those growth rounds, Series B, Series C, investors are now looking at your gross margin profile, are looking at how your long term P&L will work out, right? And you can tell them, and we had that conversation, and when we were raising growth capital, it's not where we were in terms of gross margins. This is the trend, right?
Yeah.
And these are the things which we are doing to build the AI stack in house. And people appreciated that, and they could see it in our bills. Like, what were we paying third party vendors a year ago, and what are we paying now, right? And one other thing in AI is, like, I do think, because the problem set is so massive, they could attack a lot of surface areas. Hiring people who know which problems to attack, right? For example, in customer service, there's an AI problem around speech to text transcription, right? Like, you have a phone call, you transcribe it. Then there's a problem around knowledge, like what answer. There's a problem around sentiment detection. There's a problem around GPU programming. How can you make your GPU interface better? Which of these is the highest ROI for you?
Yeah.
If you have a small team, you don't want to attack all of them at the same time, right? Both from a gross margin perspective, product and customer love perspective. So if you are moving, let's say you raise seed round, or you're early on, you are launching to market with off the shelf stuff, you prove product market fit, and then build a roadmap of all the six things I could do. These are the first I would do in 6 months, and then after that, and after that, and so on. That's a reasonable thought, I feel, of how to go about it. Yeah.
I think your business acumen that you learned growing up clearly reflects over here. You know, you don't have to build the product entirely, but at least go get customers. I think that's great insight. But let me ask you a counter question to this, because, then investors like myself will also be like, oh, you don't even have proprietary tech. Then, why are we investing in you, right? At that stage.
Uh-huh.
So now that you've had multiple rounds of growth capital that you've raised, what were
Yeah.
some of those early discussions like? Because it was a stage it was a sector which was still, just ripening,
Yeah.
and building a product in that space, which is not your own entirely at that point, but
Yeah.
you're able to acquire customers. That's a very different conversation than that you have with investors. So what were those discussions like?
Great. So I think the and this is what I when I'm sort of advising companies around doing angel investing, I look at, I think, especially how rapidly this market is changing. I look at two things: the quality of the team. So you've got to have technical depth in the team. And there are two elements to this. There's a go-to-market aspect, and then there is the technology product aspect. And I know, Vinod Khosla talks about this idea of, like, the business plan in the beginning at the seed stage. It's not about that you have a business. It's not about, like, will this business plan play out or not. It's about the detail in which you are thinking about it. So if you are meeting a founding team, or I'm meeting a founding team, I'm looking at, is this CTO or VP of engineering appreciating the depth of the technology challenge which they have to solve eventually? Do they have a plan around it? Or and then once they encounter it, do they have the ability to execute on it? So and then on the go-to-market side, okay, cool, we've solved all this fun science project, but can you sell it? Right. So, and that's really a team evaluation, really. I think it's at least what we saw. People trusted us, and all credit to them, on the team evaluation, that these guys have a combination of tech depth and go to market depth. Because if you can't do that first 100 customer conversations and hustle through that, no matter how much AI you have built, it's okay. Right? But if you can't, and so I would look at tech depth, and a roadmap around that, and then the go to market depth. And because in the early stage, you can't really have a lot on the proprietary tech piece
Yeah.
unless you're doing something. It also depends. If you're really building an AI infra company, then you can have tech
Yeah.
very early on. So it depends on the vertical too. But if it's a SaaS application, if it's an AI app or an agentic system on top, then it's really about the problems they're seeing right on their roadmap.
I love this point you're making because a lot of teams that we meet regularly in India know how to build good products because they might have gone to IITs and learned how to build and crack the tech piece of it, but they might not necessarily understand go to market, right? And first, they spend 2 years building the tech out, and then they're like, okay, now I'm moving to the US for 3 weeks, and now I'm going to acquire customers.
No.
So tell us about that experience because I'm sure you've interacted with enough teams like this who, first spend a lot of time building the product and then they go out and start talking.
If I meet a strong tech team, I only talk to them about go to market, and if I meet a strong go to market team, I only talk to them about or tech.
You have to, right? That's the only way it works. Yeah.
That's only because, like, it's also their blind spot. It's all of us blind spot. It's easy for me to be in a product meeting. I'm a product guy. It's easy for me to talk about product roadmap all day, every day. But business, the dhanda base built with customers, right? And that is where. So, in terms of how to think about it, I think two things. I was a single founder when I began, and uh, but if there are multiple founders in the team, one really good um, rule of thumb is one person focusing on the technology part, the other person is focusing on the go to market part. Who becomes the CEO? That's interesting. We've run into that question a lot. I would say the guy who knows the dhanda, the guy who can run the business, who can engage with the customers, because ultimately the business is customer centricity. Uh, so engaging that. If it's a single founder team, the ability to and and in today's day and age with AI, a single founder can do it. They just have to have in their DNA business and technology and this multifunctional aspect very or deep. I was hearing Mark Andreessen talk about this the other day. Because of AI, the bar for founders has gone up so much. Like, because you can now get Cursor to write code, you can write AI to do marketing, then the founder is the one who's stitching this all together and really has a view on like that stitched product of how to take it to market, right?
Yeah.
That's the bar. And it's probably a high bar, but big companies are built on high bars, right? So uh, that's one way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about your competitor set, you also spoke about how some of them are billion-dollar ARR companies. What is your ambition with Level AI? And if you can highlight some numbers for us, that'll be great.
Yeah, no, numbers are like hard, but like, so look, we think of this as the human impact which we can create, right? With our technology. So to give you a sense, worldwide, there are more than 30 million people who work in just customer service alone. In
Wow.
America alone, there are 5 million people who work in customer service. And the way we think about our vision is, can we play a part in figuring out how machines engage with humans in the enterprise? Like, what's that right balance of AI and humans in the enterprise? Because that's one of the seminal problems of our time. And if you think about one of the largest employers in that space is customer service, there are 5 million people who work there. So if we can play a part in solving that problem of what's the right balance of humans in the enterprises, so scale comes in, right? We talked about this Jeff thing. Impact is about distribution times innovation, right? We want to make a big dent in starting with North America, starting with US to begin with. Uh, how many of those 5 billion people can we get our technology in the hands of? We are rapidly growing since I think last 2.5 years. The number of conversations which are passing through our system have grown 10x. So the AI is analyzing 10x the amount of traffic over the last couple of years than we did. In terms of revenue, we are doubling, nearly doubling year over year. So, but the we have as I told you right in the beginning, we have a mountain to climb. Every time you climb a mountain or a hill, you see a mountain ahead of it, and you know, um, and the challenges change. Uh, but our vision is making human work experience better within the enterprise, with AI and humans being in the right balance. Like, there is a lot of talk in our space of carpet bombing automation almost, right? Like automation is the answer to everything. I don't think humans are looking for that. We're looking for the right balance. And if we can help crack solve that problem, I think we'll all be super happy with our work. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's a fascinating insight into how you think about evolution of the space as well. But like you mentioned, that a founder's journey, every day there are new challenges. Every hour, pretty much, you're dealing with something or the other. One key risk also that you're dealing with, that things are evolving very rapidly, right? Like
Yeah.
every week we
Very
are
good.
seeing technological progress, etc. But then, as a founder, how are you making decisions today? And like similar things what you were talking about, like carpet bombing, automation, a lot of people are worried about completely being replaced by AI
Yeah.
also, right? As someone who is so passionate about the human and AI intersection,
Yeah.
how do you think this space will change over, say, 3 to 5 years? I think it's anyone's guess, but let's take a
Yeah.
stab.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I do think, look, there are two parts to your question. One is how do we think about sort of being at pace with this rapid innovation, and what's our view on the thing? So, being at pace with rapid innovation, I think a couple of things. And I know it's cliche, but working backwards from the customer, our customer is not a developer, right? So for example, Cursor, who is building software for developers, has a very different problem than us. Our customer is a CX leader who wants the most modern technology, but they also want something which they can trust long term, right? Which they can put it in front of their customers and not have an impact to their brand, right? So we have to look at the pace of innovation from their eye, first of all, right? Number one. So we look at, OpenAI could be launching everything's every week, but and we launch rapidly, but can our end customer absorb it on a weekly basis? Will they trust technology coming out on a weekly basis? Cursor, which is building software for developers, they can launch on a weekly basis and developers might absorb it, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But the second thing, that doesn't mean we slow down internally, right? The second thing is, I think it comes back to the team, hiring people and having a team which is infinitely curious and which is on that edge, which wants to move really fast. I'm sure all of us have experience in our workplace, people who are like, I'm working at my rhythm and come back to me in a quarter. This is not the time for that. And it's not a, it's just, it's just a moment of time and also a moment of technology in this market with this technology set where things are changing so rapidly. That team is really critical. The third thing which we do is experiment a lot. So because I talked to you about this enterprise, the customer cannot absorb at this pace, but that doesn't stop our experimentation at that pace, right? So for example, we have a labs experience within Level where we can launch things in a week in the lab environment. Some customers can have access to it, but everyone doesn't. But that enables our engineering and product teams to rapidly launch, right? So we don't change our innovation DNA. That's how we are organizing around it, looking at it from the customer, thinking about the team, and then, having a sandbox environment where we can rapidly test. On your second question, if I knew the answer to it, like I wish, but I'll hazard a guess. Look, I firmly believe, and I had this experience the other day. Waymo is launching big time in Palo Alto now, and in Phoenix, Arizona. I was there, Phoenix 2 weeks ago. I was using Uber, but then for 5 consecutive rides, I used Waymo, which is this robo taxi. And after the sixth ride, I was like, I want to go back to Uber because there is this balance of human and robotic efficiency, and it was just gold. It was so efficient. I was missing the conversation. I was missing the, like, tell me about the local restaurant. It's so hot right now in Phoenix. What's going on? Like,
Yeah.
what's the music scene? What's this festival happening here? The robot doesn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I do think there will be a balance, and especially, you know, in the enterprise, and like going to the more nuts and bolts part of that answer, like I broadly think there will be a balance in most workflows between human and AI, depending on what that use case is. It could be 80% automation or 20% automation. But I'll tell you, I'll give you much more a bolder guess on enterprise software. I don't think the change in enterprise software would be so rapid in a lot of spaces. Like imagine when on-prem to cloud move happened. On-prem to cloud, in a lot of ways, is an IQ test, right? Like, come on, right? Like, why wouldn't you move to the cloud?
Yeah.
It's just right. Like, it's there's so many benefits. It's flexible. It's cheaper. It's secure. Like in some ways, and you can have an old app economy. But that move has taken 20 years, and still in a lot of verticals, in a lot of applications, it's has 20% penetration or 30% penetration, right?
Yeah.
And Accenture and Deloitte and all of these massive companies do multiple $1 billion of digital transformation revenue, moving folks from on-prem to cloud.
Yeah.
In the enterprise, AI adoption is not limited by AI, it is limited by API, which is the connective data between these disparate systems. And if you go within the enterprise, any Fortune 500, 1000, 2000 Indian companies, Union Bank, Canada Bank, ICICI, where, Reliance, they are built on legacy systems and AI is as good as the system underneath it.
Yeah.
So if you're doing large automation, what will you automate if you can't have an API into the system, right? So that is the other reason I just feel it'll take much longer in to have broad impact through the society. Now, will cursor be used by every developer or something like a cursor will be used by every developer? 100%.
Yeah.
It has to. That is also an IQ test. Come on, why wouldn't you use a cursor or something like that, right? There are will every marketing organization have an AI? Another IQ test, of course, right? But that doesn't mean that Bank of America in their if they have 1,000 AI IT workloads, 1,000 of them get to AI powered in the next 5 years. No chance.
That's such a powerful insight and a great way to think about it also because to your point about Canara Bank, I have an account there. I don't even have the mobile banking app that I can use for them, right? So let alone automation and being able to do customer support, let them crack their basics first and then we'll get there, right? But
And,
just
I'm sure you are seeing this. One of the biggest job categories which is coming up is the forward deployed engineer recently. What's the forward deployed engineer? It's the guy or gal who goes in and builds that API infrastructure on behalf of whatever app they want to sell, right? But they're doing a small surgery to build that API. They're not changing the entire structure, right? And that is what limits AI adoption, right? To your point, mobile adoption is not limited by the React not being there, or mobile app frameworks not being there, or technology not being there. There are a million other things,
yeah.
in between. And but from like it opens up so many questions from an investment perspective: how you build products, how do you go to market, what do you invest in, and so on. But that's why I feel like both for emotional reasons, which I talked about by Waymo, right? And I just think humans want that connect, and for very nuts and bolts like IT reasons, I just think it's a way,
Look, I think we all spend more time talking to ChatGPT and other products more than we do talking to humans these days. But I think, eventually you do miss having a human in the loop. And for psychological reasons, there is some sort of need for that. But Ashish, before I let you go, just quickly on the cross border teams piece, because I think that's another critical point that we should chat about. How did you go about building your India team and the US team? And you said 100 people are based out of India. How does that
Yeah.
work for you?
Yeah, no. So I think like look, your story. So I'll make 2 points there. Your story and like the podcast you have is about the India growth thing as well. I actually feel India has an incredible opportunity because AI, because in the first leg of this journey, this was about data and GPUs, and the next leg of this journey will be about talent. And India is that talent multiplier. There's a data multiplier and there's a talent multiplier. We find an incredible depth of AI talent in India. How did we go about it? So, um, there was an element of familiarity with Delhi, and we were all from Delhi to begin with. We thought between Bangalore and Delhi, and we did the counterintuitive thing because everyone was hiring in Delhi. We wanted to fish in a market where there were not so many people hiring for quality technology talent. And we were not looking to build a 5,000-person team. We were looking to build a 200-person team, right? Or then 500 and 1,000 to begin with. We looked at the ecosystem in Delhi of the underlying colleges, IIT, DC, MIT, and so on. So there was enough talent for us to hunt from. That was number one. Number two, we actually went in and again looked at specific AI labs within the premier institutions. So, for example, within IIT Delhi, there's Professor Mawsam, who is an incredible AI lab, and that's a great place for us to think of long-term technical talent strategy, right? Um, so now to the extent that we have the same interview bar globally. It doesn't matter where you are joining the Zoom from. Could be Denver or Gurgaon or Noida or New York. It's the same set of interview questions. It's the same interview bar for the AI talent, for the PM talent. And we find that the India team passes it as well, or if not better, than the US team. So that's how we go about it. One uniform standard, identify pools of talent, and go from there. It's hard because you have to manage a global culture,
Yeah.
but I totally think it's worth the investment because, especially in the Bay Area, OpenAI is hiring here, Google is hiring here, Meta is hiring here. I'm sure you've heard about the
Not everyone has $100 million bonuses. And
right. So for a startup to compete for that quality of talent, who can compete at OpenAI, but so that's how you we think about it. Yeah.
Ashish, thank you so much for taking out the time. I think, my intention with this podcast was to talk to someone who's actually deeply in the trenches on a daily basis and to be able to share your experience and insights with our audience. And I think you've done a fantastic job in outlining your journey, your insights, and, your unique point of view on this, not only sector, but also evolution of AI. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rishti.
It's not every day that you get to sit across from your icon and ask them all the questions that you wanted answers to. And that was the day for me today. If you enjoyed watching this episode, please remember to subscribe to our channel so that you get notifications every time we drop another one.